Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marcus Webb. I'm the Associate Director of Admission and Financial Aid Analytics here at UNC Asheville, and I want to welcome you to another of our Q&A with UNCA sessions. This one is with some members of our faculty. If you were able to join us on our virtual admitted student day, you'll probably see some familiar faces. We've got some members of faculty from across the disciplines here at UNC Asheville, and just an opportunity for you to engage with the members of our distinguished faculty who will be working with you in the future in classrooms, in undergraduate research, and a lot of different aspects of your educational experience. So welcome, everyone. Just a couple of housekeeping things as you have questions throughout the course of this session. Please do put those into the Q&A box feature at the bottom of the screen. We'll kind of set aside the chat box and really focus on the Q&A to post your questions as we go throughout. As you registered, we had you pose some of the questions that you might want to have, so we've got some of those that we'll get to as well throughout the course of the next hour or so. So again, welcome to our Q&A session, and I'd like to go ahead and bring our faculty members into the panel so that we can get these guys introduced and then get to your questions. So welcome aboard. All right, as we bring everybody up here, we've got one more to bring on. There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm going to go through really quickly and introduce our panelists to you. I'm just going to start in the orientation that they appear on my screen. I don't know how they may look to everybody else. But first and foremost, we have Dr. Regine Criser here with us. Dr. Criser is an assistant professor of German. She holds a PhD in Germanic languages and literature from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She has a special research focus on contemporary German literature and culture, as well as on inclusive teaching, and was a 2017 recipient of the Goethe Institute AATG Certificate of Merit and the 2018 UNC Asheville Award for Excellent Teaching by Untenured Faculty. And she's currently overseeing the redesign of the UNC Asheville first year experience. And as of last week, I believe there was another honor that was bestowed upon you, and you'll have to forgive me for forgetting the name, but if you could let us know what that honor was, that would be fantastic, Dr. Criser.
Distinguished Service Award.
There it is. Congratulations. And we have Dr. Sally Wasileski, who's a chair and professor of analytical and computational chemistry. Dr. Wasileski holds a PhD in chemistry from Purdue University, has a teaching and research focus in computational and environmental chemistry. She is the coordinator of the UNC Asheville Chemistry Scholars Program and has conducted postdoctoral work in chemical engineering at the University of Virginia. Welcome, Dr. Wasileski. We have Dr. Lyndi Hewitt here with us as well, who's an associate professor of sociology. Dr. Hewitt holds a PhD in sociology from Vanderbilt University and has a teaching and research focus on social movements, human rights, gender studies, and feminism, and has conducted collaborative research with the Global Fund for Women, and was also selected to serve as a delegate of Sociologists for Women in Society to the United Nations Economic and Social Council. We have Dr. Graham Reynolds, who's an assistant professor of biology. Dr. Reynolds holds a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of Tennessee. He has special research emphasis on genetic data to study the evolution, ecology, and conservation of reptiles and amphibians. Dr. Reynolds has conducted extensive field work in the southeastern United States, the Caribbean, the West Indies, Central America, and beyond, and that's been highlighted by the co-discovery of a new species of boa constrictor. Dr. Reynolds is also a National Geographic explorer and is a former postdoctoral fellow at Harvard University. And then we have Steve Alford, who is an instructor in the music department and also the recruitment coordinator for the visual and performing arts. So if you've had any academic interest thus far in the visual and performing arts, you've probably heard from Steve as he works with our students in those disciplines. Steve is a graduate of the University of Miami's Studio Music and Jazz program. He's the composer and leader of the genre-bending big band called Rational Discourse. And again, he works with prospective students with academic interests in the areas of music, art history, drama, and English and creative writing. So again, I welcome our panelists here, and I will remind all of our participants to, again, pose your questions to the Q&A box as we go along. And while we'll cover a number of subjects, of course, if you've been participating in any of these Q&A sessions, you know they have a lot of different focuses throughout multiple areas of the institution, of university life at UNC Asheville. So we'll be able to get to some of the more specific questions. Others are going to be a little bit better focused on some of those other sessions. I'm certainly happy to let our faculty members talk about their experiences in the dining hall. But again, we'll leave the specifics of those kinds of things to our dining services team. So first and foremost, I know this has been a big subject on a lot of people's minds. I would like to ask our panelists just to give our attendees kind of an update on what the experience of the past few months has been like during the context of the pandemic, and particularly your transition to really providing the kind of, to the best of your abilities anyway, the kind of experience that you receive at UNC Asheville, where engagement and direct learning is so vital, how that's worked for you in a virtual environment. So I'll start there and let you guys kind of dig in.
Who wants to go first, or do you want me to take it?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. I know for me, the transition was actually reasonably easy because I do so much work online right now anyway. So I have a large video set up at my house, my home office, and everything on top of my piano. But it's been fascinating, especially getting everybody used to it and getting everybody interested in the interface. I know for my classes, I have had live classes for each of my classes, of all of our regular class periods. So that's been important, at least for my particular approach with it. But we've had a lot of engagement, a lot of cross-student projects in between students working on things online and projects online, and then putting together composite music projects as if we're in a classroom. So but it's been fun.
I can go next. So I'm in the chemistry department. A lot of the work that we do is experiential learning. And so that was a transition from being hands-on in the laboratory to teaching remotely. But what we do is solve problems as chemists and use the tools and the skills that we developed. So even though some of our students weren't able to collect their own data in the laboratory, they were still able to analyze data, evaluate that, use all the critical thinking skills that they've been developing in a remote way. Undergraduate research is incredibly important at UNC Asheville and is one of the high impact practices that so many of our students engage in. When current students weren't able to return from spring break, we spent time taking pictures of lab notebook pages in the research labs to send to students so that they could continue to work on their data at home and prepare their research presentations for the undergraduate research symposium and finish their thesis drafts at home. And so although we wished we still had students on campus, we understand that was not a situation we could have. And we really tried our very best to support students, to enable them to finish the semester with integrity, with a ton of learning, a lot of compassion, because situations for how we learn at home changed significantly, both for our students and for ourselves, how we work. But really thinking about putting students first, their learning first, their health and well-being first. That continued in an online format, the same that it did in face-to-face. So the format of office hours looked a little different. It was more video chat and email and those types of exchanges, but the authenticity really persisted. And I'll stop now.
Any others care to weigh in there, or we want to move to another question?
We can move to another question. I think the experience, has been pretty much covered in that we weren't necessarily expecting it, but we were nonetheless ready to take on the challenge because we have great support at UNCA and we have students, who were in it with us. So I think Sally put it best with compassion and integrity. I think that's the best way to describe how the majority of campus tackled this issue.
I can just add real quickly that I think one of the things that sets the Asheville apart from a lot of other institutions is that the faculty who are here came here because we love teaching and we love mentoring and supporting students. We care about that more than anything else. We all have very active research agendas and we're engaged in our communities, but our number one priority is teaching. And that remains true, whether we're interacting with students face-to-face in classrooms and in our offices, or through a Zoom meeting every day of the week or 2 or 3 times a week, or via email. The support for students remains our deepest commitment. And we had to innovate, we continue to have to innovate, but I have been so deeply impressed with the way that our faculty have come together to support each other in learning quickly and in sharing strategies that are helpful for students. And in, a lot of us have surveyed students. I'm a social scientist, so I sent surveys to students to ask about their experiences, to give us feedback about what's working and what isn't, and to make quick changes that better meet their needs. And so I'm a parent of a high school student right now. Thankfully, she's not a senior, but this is very much on my mind. And I would want to know how our faculty at a university going to support my student if situations should change quickly, and what, we can't assure what the world is going to look like tomorrow or in a month or in a year. But what we can assure you is that our faculty at UNC Asheville take the needs of students very seriously, and it is what we're devoted to.
And on that note of not being able to predict what is to come tomorrow or in the coming months, there were a number of questions posed initially just about what the fall semester is going to look like. There aren't definitive answers yet, but the answers, as best as they can be provided at this point, is that UNC Asheville, in conjunction with the UNC system and with the state of North Carolina, are doing all things as far as plans go to be in person for the fall semester. There are a number of contingencies on the table as far as timelines go, as far as semester start and end dates go, but all of those are being worked through, again, with state health officials, county health officials, city health officials, the UNC system. So there will be continuous information coming out about what that looks like, but all plans are being made right now to have everything in place to have an on-campus experience in the fall. So again, that information will continue to be updated as updates do occur. So, in that regard, that's as far really as we can go at this juncture as expectations for what the fall will look like. Another question that was posed, I think I'm gonna frame this slightly differently in the way that it was asked, but I really think it will hopefully capture what the essence of the question was. Can you highlight what some of your most memorable faculty and student relationships have been like, as far as the students that you've worked with, done research with? What have been some impactful relationships that you've developed with students in your tenure here at UNC Asheville?
I can start with that one. As has already been mentioned, undergraduate research is a really important component of sort of our ethos here at UNC Asheville. And so one of my favorite things is getting to work with students one-on-one, whether it's in the lab or in the field, and seeing students develop these skills that they're learning in the classroom and then applying them to real world issues and discovering something new. That's one of these themes that we have is, learn something new, discover something new, and students really do get the opportunity to do that. I've had research students coming through my my lab, doing all kinds of different things, and just watching them grow and literally discover new things, like new species of snakes, has just been incredibly rewarding. So that's probably one of my favorite things, is when the faculty get to know the students, we get to understand what it is that they're interested in, what is it that they want to learn, what do they get excited about, and how can we encourage that?
I agree and second everything that Graham said. I'll add a couple of quick stories. One, I got to participate just this past week in a virtual graduation ceremony of a former student who was graduating with a master's degree. And so that was really exciting. We remain connected to a lot of our students after they leave. One example that comes to my mind readily, some years ago, I had a student who was taking my research methods class, which for those of you who know much about social science, research methods is the dreaded, boring, required class that most students don't really want to take. And I had a student who was a little bit jaded, was having a bit of a rough time, but ended up becoming more interested in the class than he thought he would. In the next semester, he completed an internship with a local organization. Actually, it's called Just Economics. And he was able to put to use some of his survey and quantitative skills through this internship, and ultimately then was hired to do additional survey research and analysis and presentations for the city of Asheville. So a class turned into an internship, turned into a professional opportunity. And this was a student that, a year before that never would have seen himself doing that sort of thing. He went on to graduate with a very high GPA and went on to get a master's degree at one of the top schools in his field in the country. And that is gratifying on many levels. I still talk to this graduate, have a lot of personal affection and fondness for each other, but also am just so proud watching his journey. And I think most of us have many, many stories just like that.
I know for me, we have such a visceral live music scene in Asheville that not only the people who now teach here in Asheville, I mean, we come from music scenes all throughout the country, New York and Chicago and Miami and Nashville and LA and Austin. So we live here because not only do we get to teach here, but we also get to play and perform in this particular music scene. And the students that we have spend a lot of time out playing with us in professional settings. And so from day one, there's a lot of the student interaction continuously throughout the 4 years that they're here. And then that translates into the professional music scene. And so I have students that are former students of mine that I'm still playing with, or that I'm doing recording projects with, people that are on and off the road in tours that are coming back through here. And we're just interacting with them constantly. So I wouldn't even say there's a specific interaction, Marcus. It's more of a continual thriving back and forth, for our particular department, but also I think that transcends across the entire university.
And I'll kind of try to highlight something a little bit different is what are the modes by which we get to know our students, and they're different. One is through classes where we have, class sizes that range, in chemistry, the first course, general chemistry, is about 36 students. And then laboratory classes are, maybe 20 to 24 in that range. So you get to know your students pretty well. What we want to really convey is a welcoming atmosphere, and really the best learning that happens is one-on-one during office hours, which are the time that all faculty spend in our offices to answer specific questions one-on-one with a student, to go over a problem or a concept they might be struggling with, but also just to get to know them more and learn about their aspirations and hopes and dreams and what they want to get out of college and what they want to do in the future. And so that leads into kind of the second form, which is academic advising. And in academic advising, we it's really a back and forth of getting to know what each student wants to gain out of their experience and how to help them navigate that, whether that's through internships, undergraduate research opportunities, how to think about careers now or long term. And that really, you don't have to know all of the answers right away, that there's things about how to develop interests and skills. And it's not just that necessarily that one job that you're trying to prepare yourself for, but what is that sort of long-term type of career that you might want to have, and help kind of formulate that over time. We also get to know our students very, very well in the undergraduate research environment, where you're working to solve really important problems. And that's where I'd say the interaction is more like colleagues, where you're thinking and figuring out strategies to address a question, or how do we evaluate this data, or what would the interpretation be, or really critically evaluate what our biases might be about the data. And through all of these different types of interactions that ebb and flow and unfold over 4 years, you get to know each other very, very well. I have already been to one wedding that was a former student this year. Prior to March, I hope to go to another one later this year as well. And so those are the types of the evolution of that trust and understanding that you develop. I love it when I get pictures of firstborn children and things like that. It's, you kind of carve out something meaningful in a person's life, and it's something I hold very precious and dear, to have that kind of long-term relationship. I've been at UNC Asheville for 15 years, and some student relationships are, you know, a holiday card once a year, or a text or an email when there's a life event, and others are, I have a job interview, can you practice with me? And so that may have been a student who graduated some time ago, but is more, some are more intensive or more frequent interactions than others, but that's just, human nature. So I'd say that, things build over time, and they happen in different ways. But like Dr. Hewitt said, we are all here because helping students and teaching and really having a positive impact is our highest priority. And so with that motivation and that intention, you get to know your students very well, and they get to know you back.
Yeah, and I can just add that in German, the German program is relatively small, so I have the benefit that I know all of our majors and minors that we have, and it's always very special when we have a major or minor who starts in German 110 without knowing any German previously, who make it all the way through, and you see them graduate, being really proficient in German and being able to conduct their life in a different country. That is a really rewarding thing to see, and a great relationship to build. I also teach a lot in the first year experience, and so that is a very special kind of teaching for me, and the relationship building there, I think, is of a particular kind that I value. And I love when I encounter the students that I had in my first year seminar later on campus, and when we just wave or hug or share a story or share a moment there. And a year ago I had my first year seminar that I ever taught graduate, and it was lovely to see the students cross the stage, because that's kind of what we've been talking about when they got to college. And along the lines, I had the honor of officiating 2 of my former students' weddings. So we really build long-term relationships here.
I'm going to mash up a couple of questions here. So ride with me for a moment. We had a question just come in on the Q&A just about first year students and their first semester schedules. So I'll answer that briefly. The first semester schedule is actually put together by a team of professional academic advisors based on information that you provide through a preference form. So as students submit their enrollment deposits and they're preparing to enroll, that staff is going to put together a preliminary first semester schedule, which at our virtual Embark orientation this summer, you'll have the opportunity to sit down and talk with advisors about changes, alterations, those kinds of things that you may want to make to that schedule. But the initial process, again, will be prompted by responses that you as the student provide on this course preference form, which is going to ask about, what kinds of coursework have you completed at the high school level, what academic area are you interested in pursuing as a major, or do you know at this point? What kinds of foreign languages are you interested in, or do you have experience in, those kinds of things. So that will give the professional advising staff a little bit of leeway and lead into what the first semester schedule looks like. But again, at Embark, you will have the opportunity to go over that schedule with an advisor. So that being said, we had another question come through, particularly about early college students, but in just a bigger sense, in kind of a more macro fashion. Can you talk a little bit more just about the advising process that occurs once that transition really moves into the academic disciplines? So again, incoming students particularly are going to work with the professional advising staff, but really as they make that transition into declaring their majors and the faculty advising role takes over. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about what that process looks like and what kind of guidance you offer throughout that process?
And if I may just add to your answer for Embark and the first year schedule. Marcus is absolutely right that the professional advisors start out working on that schedule, but during the virtual Embark, every student will have the possibility to talk with an academic advisor from the faculty, and we'll take into account, the major or minor areas that you're interested in to make sure that, you get all the information you need and there's ability for you to complete the schedule. So there's a first draft with some classes, and then you have choice and agency in completing your first year schedule, because you want to make sure that you are in the classes that you need to be on to make progress. But we also want to make sure that you find classes that interest you, that you are just curious about, where you can find some joy, where you can try something out that you maybe have never thought about. So we really want to make sure that that's possible. And we have some good amount of time set aside during virtual Embark to make sure that, your questions are answered, and you can put the schedule together that makes you feel excited about the fall semester.
I know just specifically music students will get assigned an advisor from the music department so that they're working directly with somebody from the music department to figure out how to make sure that you get everything done within those 4 years. So from a music specific thing, if you're coming in as a music student, that's what you'll get. And then also I would encourage anybody who has any interest in any of the arts at all, so be it major or minor or just peripheral, just participatory interest. If you haven't gotten in touch with me, reach out to me. My email is actually in the chat right now, and you can email me directly. But there's actually an intake form that I have everybody fill out who has any interest in any of the arts. And that's information that I end up passing around to the faculty, and it's going to go to the advisors this summer, so that they can actually see peripheral interests that you might be interested in. It helps give some ideas of what classes you might want to explore that are outside of your major path. So.
I'll build off of some of the comments to say that starting the very first day of class, so the first day of your first semester, every student will have an academic advisor who is a faculty member. And that person may be in their area of interest, but many students are undecided, or they have, it might be one of these 3 things that I'm interested in, and that's Again, part of what it is to come to college and to explore and find interests and passions. But everyone does have a faculty member who is their academic advisor and will help with the first year schedule. So in the fall semester, we'll help plan the schedule for the spring semester. And then in the spring semester, meet with them to help plan the schedule for the fall semester and also get to know, you know, what other interests are if the student is a student athlete and needs to have a schedule that best accommodates the needs of being both a student and an athlete, or many other variables. Eventually, when you declare a major, you are automatically assigned an advisor in your major department so that they can best help you with all the nuances of what it means for me, for example, to be a chemistry major, or the process of applying to graduate school in chemistry, or what are the industry positions that are available, or all of the different options of what chemistry majors and chemistry graduates might do. And so while you start with definitely a faculty member, it may or may not be in your major, but then you automatically will have an advisor in your area of interest, and that is a faculty member. The professional advising staff is also there, and they provide a lot of resources and support. But once you're day one on campus, you engage with a faculty member in advising.
One of my favorite things about advising is getting that chance to talk to students and get to know them, especially students who are coming into the program, for instance, biology. That initial advising appointment is going to be not just, okay, what courses are you thinking about? It's going to be, tell me about you. What are you interested in? What do you want to learn? Where do you see yourself going? Do you want to go to graduate school, med school? What is it? And how can we get you there? And that conversation gets repeated every semester with those students. And it's really fun, I think, for me, because I get to see what is it the students are interested in, what do they want to do, and how can I help them? So those advising appointments, I think, are fantastic. And we really do take a lot of pride in that, and we set aside time for that.
Can you give some insight into what the classroom experience is like, particularly for your disciplines and your classrooms, but just what makes the experience of being in the classroom distinctive here at UNCA?
I think for my subject, I can say that at UNCA, we are lucky that at the most you're going to be in a language class with 23 students. We don't have classes that are bigger than that, which is absolutely essential for language learning because it provides the opportunity for everybody to be actively engaged and to speak, as much as students don't like it in the beginning. But I think we have found various ways in creating an atmosphere where everybody feels safe making mistakes, because those are crucial to learn a language. There's no way around it. Everybody is making them, and we try to create an atmosphere where that is easily possible for everybody involved. We are from the very first class on integrate language, literature, grammar, history, music, so we don't divide classes along a traditional model where you have to learn the language first before you can do anything with it. We work with the language from the very first day of class, and we make sure that students learn what they need in order to work with the language. We want you to be able to use it as quickly as possible. So it's interactive. It is in the target language. So whatever language you learn, that is the language that you're going to hear the most in that classroom. It's usually not spent just sitting down for 75 minutes. So there's a lot going on, and I'm amazed how my colleagues see abreast of everything that's happening in the field. So I can proudly say that we are at the cutting edge of where language education is in the country, and that you are able to experience that in a small classroom setting, which is perfect for language learning, and we're very proud of that.
From a chemistry standpoint, the classes are involve a lot of active learning. So students are don't spend their time sitting behind their desks listening to someone talk to them for an hour, but instead are solving problems, thinking about approaches, trying to engage more deeply in that material with each other and with their professors. The small classes are really important for enabling that to happen. In the laboratory setting, we, in the chemistry department, our labs are course-based undergraduate research experiences. So they are a laboratory course. You learn the skills and the safety and the approaches of that particular course, but you learn that and do that by solving or asking kind of relevant real-world questions and finding answers to that. So instead of kind of redoing the same experiment over and over again, which gives the same answer, we try to ask questions that make us think more, where we don't know the answer, and we then have to understand and interpret. And that happens starting the very first course and extends all the way through to graduation, where you just dig deeper and learn more as you go. But there's a lot of engagement, a lot of working together, and a lot of small groups. I think that is really important, though, because we see students develop these study groups that last long through their career and then become great friends as after graduation. And so the community that's built through some of those approaches are also I think really important, where you're not learning in isolation.
For me, Marcus, maybe it's when we're not in the classroom is some of the more fun stuff. I'm from this area, and so I know all the secret spots where to see wildlife. So I take my students out to those secret spots, places that I've been, cultivating for decades, and we go look for wildlife in this area. So, small class size allows us to pile into a van and get out there and really see in person the kinds of things that we learn about.
And just building on what both Dr. Wasileski and Dr. Reynolds have said about applied and active learning and about getting out of the classroom, we have a lot of social science courses that are doing this sort of work as well, but appropriate to our own disciplines. So we have a tremendous amount of community engaged research happening. So once students are ready and once they've gotten a few skills, a few tools in their toolkit, we invite them to go into the community and try to solve real world problems and address real world problems, as opposed to just learning from sort of simulations in the classroom. And students have reported over and over again that they get a lot out of these experiences and they feel much better prepared for their next steps, whether that be graduate school or working in the professional world. The other thing that I'll echo is the emphasis on small groups, and whether that be discussions or group projects or what have you. Students have come to expect and really appreciate the fact that when they walk into a classroom, not only are they not going to be talked at for 75 minutes, but they're going to be required to talk a little bit. And oftentimes that takes place in very small groups where they have the ability to gain the comfort and the skills in order to critically think and communicate about what they're learning. And I'll just quickly say as well, since I'm teaching a summer class right now, for instance, and I thought, how am I going to bring that small group discussion feel to online learning? And thankfully, the wizards at Zoom have developed breakout rooms. And that's been really seamless. So we start our conversation together, and then the students go off into breakout rooms for a little while and come back, and we sort of compare notes. And that kind of seminar style discussion translates really remarkably well.
I just have to add on Dr. Reynolds' comment. He once told me a story. regarding, and correct me on the details if I miss anything, but the notion of studying fish and their habitat, and how in most places when you're going to go examine fish in their habitat, there's a particular device used to shock the water that brings the fish to the surface, and you take a look at them and you put them back. And where's the habitat, I guess, learning in that process? His students are going to put on wetsuits and they're going to get in the water, and they're actually going to go into the habitat to study fish in their habitat. So just a distinction and a difference in the way the approach occurs, I think is really uniform in some fashion across all of our disciplines here at UNC Asheville. Another question, actually a set of questions, and these are going to be, we're going to put you on the spot, Steve. They're music specific. Can you talk a little bit about what the placement process looks like for particularly the performing arts, the audition process, and then maybe some of the, as you mentioned earlier, some of the just participation opportunities, so ensembles, those kinds of things that may be outside of the major. Just how can students get involved with the performing arts?
Sure. As far as being able to major in the 3 different music degrees that we have here, it does require an audition in order to enter the music school. And those happen, some of them I review some of the online auditions over the summer, but generally they happen during November and January during the year. All of our ensembles, though, are open to non-majors by audition. So that's any of the contemporary ensembles, any of the classical ensembles, the chamber ensembles, the wind ensemble, the pep band, the jazz band, any of those are open by audition. A few of the ensembles are open without audition. The wind ensemble does not require an audition, but it does require an audition for placement within the wind ensemble. Our larger choirs don't require an audition, but there will be an audition to place you. But non-participants are non-majors are encouraged to participate in any of the ensembles. So it's a great fun to be cross-fertilized, obviously, into any of the artistic disciplines. So my last bass trombone player in my big band was a mechatronics and robotics major. So you are encouraged to do so. If you've got any questions about those, you can certainly reach out to me. Marcus, did you want me to answer a couple of the other questions that I see in the Q&A?
Absolutely.
It looks like somebody asked about applied lessons, in which instruments they can be geared towards. Applied lessons are one-on-one instruction with a private instructor, and those instruments are pretty open. I'm not exactly sure. The question here says, do the applied courses limited to certain instruments? And that's a really loaded question because there's thousands of instruments that are out there. But your standard contemporary instruments, as well as your standard what would be considered your classical wind and string instruments, are all available here. You do need to be a major or a minor in order to be able to take applied lessons. So that would be one thing you would want to consider. And then somebody asked about the placement test for theory. Our music theory, I'm actually supposed to find that out later this week in terms of exactly when we are handling our placement tests. I believe it's actually going to be broken up into 2 sections. Some of the theory will be taken online during the summer, and that will be rolled into your Embark. And then the ear training and piano tests, I believe, are going to be handled in person in August. But we'll actually have that information later this week. But it will take place before classes begin in the fall. And a final note, if you are interested in any of the music ensembles, there is always a meeting right at the beginning of the semester on the first Tuesday at noon when classes begin for anyone who's interested in any of the ensembles. So it's a big mass meeting of the music department. If you are interested in getting that information, reach out to me via my email. You need to fill out the intake form for those arts, and anybody who's interested in music will get notifications on the available ensembles and all of that, which would kick off in the fall.
We do have another question just about the start of the fall term, and I think I'll kind of go back to what we stated earlier. That's still contingent, obviously, upon a number of things at this point. Our intent is to begin in August. Our calendar may slightly differ than what typical fall semester calendars may look like, but it is, again, fully our intent to do everything possible to begin the semester with a semblance of normalcy in some fashion. But as mentioned earlier, that information will continue to be produced and made and sent out as it becomes more solid. We've had a couple of questions. I know our panelists somewhat talked about this at the beginning in describing what their transition has looked like in terms of moving to online instruction for a temporary period of time. But we do have questions about what will that look like if for some reason we still are in remote instruction come the fall, and how have you and how would you plan to adapt what your instruction looks like if that does come to pass? Fingers crossed that isn't the case.
As always, I think UNCA is thinking really well ahead and is planning for all possibilities. So right now, I think more than half of all instructors on campus are taking one or more of the 9 workshops that our Center for Teaching and Learning is offering that are specifically geared towards online learning. And so everybody has the opportunity to catch up on what they might have been missing in the rather fast move to remote teaching. And I think it's, it's to make sure, because we have summer classes online, so the workshops are initially geared towards everybody who's teaching in the summer, to make sure that we can really offer an excellent experience for our students. But I know that there are more faculty than teaching in the summer in those workshops. So I think everybody is really making sure that they're as well prepared as possible to take on whatever comes their way. And so I think, as we said in the beginning, we will, again, handle this with compassion and integrity, and be even better prepared than we were this time around. And so I personally am not worried in that regard, because I know the faculty go above and beyond to make sure that we can provide the best possible experience for the students in whichever way our fall semester shapes up to look like.
I'll kind of flip it on its side and say what I think it won't be, because the faculty here are so dedicated to getting to know our students and to having really high learning, like significant learning in the courses that are happening. So what it won't be is feeling like you're taught by a computer. You're definitely going to be taught by an expert who cares about your student and cares about learning. We are all, we pride ourselves on the amount of small group engagement and one-on-one, and the individualized, that every student is an individual in our classrooms. And so we're learning a lot about how to facilitate that more effectively using some of the online tools. So how to facilitate community, how to facilitate discussion groups and communication in an online environment, so that the things that are really, really important to us are still happening, regardless of whether we are teaching face-to-face inside a classroom, or if we have kind of a computer barrier between us, that it doesn't feel like a wall, that it's just a mode of engagement. I will speak, and maybe Dr. Reynolds can communicate a little bit more. There's a lot of concerns about laboratory courses because of the hands-on skills that are so important in developing the scientific aspect. I'm sure it's the same in in all of the performing arts, and probably every discipline. But my lens and anxiety comes from laboratory courses, and really figuring out how to create that same inquiry-based experience if we're not able to do that in person. And so that's going to be a lot of my thought process over the summer. I've engaged in several workshops on that for just in case, so that we can provide the best learning experience regardless of how that looks.
I know I could maybe add to that a little bit, because you're right, the performing arts are scary to try to, when people start trying to think about what it means in order to teach a performing art across a camera lens. I would actually even look at it in a little bit of a different facet too. I mean, we're in the middle of a massive paradigm shift in all of our communication structures. And this is going on long before the virus started. Zoom and conferencing and the ability to function remotely across major distances in real time has been slowly gaining speed since the telephone was invented, and it's moving in a massively exponential curve right now. And so, no matter what discipline you're going to be in the future, you're in virtual reality in 10 years. And so the ability to begin functioning across these new paradigms is actually really important. And so when we're thinking about music, I mean, it is difficult for me right now to teach a class that involves 5 students in an ensemble. But it's not difficult to start replicating the abilities that we use already nowadays in any of our studio music programs, to create the albums that you listen to, the music that you listen to. This stuff can be done now, and it can actually be done almost better and faster and more direct remotely than it can piled into one room into a studio system. And so there's aspects to it that are difficult. There's aspects to it that are challenges. There's also an exciting part of what we're going through right now, which is becoming, which I think that if people kind of latch onto that a little bit too, you start getting some of the good things that are coming from it.
Sorry, I have to add one more thing, if I may. So some of us have also had the opportunity to do some training with nationally recognized programs and best practices for online learning. And something that I've really been thinking about, having participated in some of that training, is there's a real difference between teaching students who signed up for online learning from the very beginning, right? There's been online learning for colleges and lots of other kinds of online learning opportunities for years now, decades. But in all of those cases, people knew what they were signing up for, right? What's different about what's happening right now is that the vast majority of students and the vast majority of faculty would much prefer for these interactions to be happening in person. The faculty would rather be teaching in person, and the students would rather be learning in person. And so that adds an additional layer to best practices. And I really believe that UNC Asheville has an opportunity, and so far is really seizing that opportunity to do online learning differently, right? To use best practices and to make sure that we're maximizing the learning opportunities for students, but that we're doing it in a way that fits, that aligns with our mission and our values, and the kind of customized, one-on-one, small group, highly attentive experiences that students want to have.
If I could add something to that too, because that to me is the biggest difference here, is that I don't think I know the colleagues that I've been working directly with have not been attempting to quickly change their system to what Dr. Hewitt was describing, the online platform that has already existed. The idea is how are we utilizing the new technologies with the way we always like to teach and still want to teach, and creating new ground with it. And it's been fun, it's been challenging, but it's been exciting what's been happening.
Well, I do believe that was the last of our posted questions that we have for the afternoon. So we've got about 4 minutes to spare. So if there are no burning questions that anybody wants to throw up into the Q&A box at this point, I want to extend a significant thanks to all of our panelists as they are wrapping up the semester and preparing to hopefully exhale here in the next little while for a brief moment anyway, before transitioning on to the summer and lots of preparations for the fall. So again, our significant gratitude for taking an hour to spend here with us this afternoon. And if there are additional questions for our participants today that pop up, feel free to contact the admission office and we'll get you connected with the right folks to get your questions answered. And I do want to remind the folks that are still on as attendees, there are a number of Q&A sessions coming over the next couple of weeks. In particular, on May 20th, there is going to be a session with members of our senior staff that's going to be led by Chancellor Cable. So it'll be a good opportunity to dig further into what the plans look like, over the course of the summer and leading into the fall, and pose those kinds of questions to our senior leadership. So again, thank you all for attending. Thank you to our panelists, and I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, and we will sign off from here. Take care.